Hello, it's Judith here. And today I'm going to talk about social anxiety. Firstly, what it is. Secondly, how the pandemic in the last 2 years have had an effect. And thirdly, what you can do about it, both a couple of tips and how I can help. So firstly, what is social anxiety? Put very simply, it's someone being anxious in social situations. And it can vary dramatically from individual to individual. So for some people, there are very specific social situations in which they struggle and find uncomfortable. And for others, it can be almost anything out of a very small set of situations where they feel comfortable. So they can possibly go to work because that's familiar, they can visit family and maybe even close friends, but anything outside of that is difficult. Many of us suffer from two particular kinds of social anxiety. One is being in a group where you know very few people, and you're having to sort of introduce yourself or join into conversations. And I personally struggled with that before I knew what I know now. Other people have the opposite, which I was always very comfortable with, and that's talking to a group of people in a more formal situation. So I'd quite happily talk to 300 people on stage or run a training course, which is what I did for many years. And that was fine because I was in control, I think. And also I had a position of authority, so people, not everybody chose to listen to me, but mostly people are very polite, particularly in this country, in those situations. So yeah, it's a more complex fear than many that I deal with. The pandemic has had a couple of effects, I think, at least. Firstly, for people who already suffered from social anxiety pre-pandemic, the fact that they were told to stay at home and not go out and not mix with people was a relief. Oh my goodness, nobody's going to put pressure on me. I'm not going to put pressure on myself to do things I'm not comfortable doing. I can stay at home because I'm being told to. But of course, there is a risk that long periods of staying at home make it difficult to mix socially. So really, really difficult for those with social anxiety to come back out into the world, which was already a place they were unhappy about certain aspects of. Even more difficult after, what did we have, 3 lockdowns, and a certain amount of restriction in terms of what you did and who you did it with, even when restrictions were lifted. So people with social anxiety pre-pandemic are suffering even more now, as far as I'm concerned, and given the people that I see. But interestingly, I think those of us that didn't suffer pre-pandemic may be suffering from an element of social anxiety as things have opened up. And I certainly have found, and I wasn't aware of it until I thought about it, a reluctance to resume the things that we were doing pre-pandemic. And it wasn't until I thought about it, I thought, oh, actually, is it that have some fear about going back into situations where I was very comfortable before, and was that fear around, would I be comfortable with those people or would they be comfortable with me? How would I be accepted? And of course, what happened was, because I didn't join in right at the beginning when everybody got together, then I was going into a group which had already re-established itself, and it's fine now. I'm absolutely back into the social swing with a lot of encouragement from those people that were in the groups that I was mixing with. But I just found it interesting, because of what I do, that was the case. And I've talked to other people who have also struggled with getting back not just because of health risks, but just because of, oh, can I still do that? It's amazing how a couple of years of not doing things that we were quite comfortable doing can make us uncomfortable. So social anxiety is worse for those that suffered before, and for those that maybe, as in my case, had suffered in the past, or maybe had never suffered at all but are now thinking, really, do I want to do that? Why don't I just stay at home and put on a good movie? Okay, so what can we do about it? If you are suffering from social anxiety and have to go to social events, as we often do, you know, partners' work dues and things like that, or maybe, like me, you run a business and face-to-face networking is back, which is, in a way, more difficult than doing it online, or even more difficult than not doing it at all. What can you do? I'm going to go back to my old favourite technique, simply because it is so effective given how easy it is. And that's breathing. Doing deep, slow breathing. If you're going into an event, I would do it before I left. I would maybe do it in the car before I got out and walked into wherever I'm going. Is deep, slow breathing. Breathing from your diaphragm, so making sure your belly comes out when you breathe in and goes in when you breathe out. And slow, even, steady breaths, if you can, counting in for a count of 6 as you breathe in, and then counting for a count of 6 as you breathe out. And deep, equal breathing tells your brain there is no threat. Because what's happening with social anxiety, the same with all the other fears that I deal with, for some reason, a particular situation has become a threat to us. So as far as our brain's concerned, we've just spotted a saber-toothed tiger wanting to come and kill us. So the fight-flight response kicks in, and we can take control of that with our breathing. So if you have to go into situations and you're struggling, do the breathing. And you can always do it when you're there. If you feel yourself getting a bit panicky, you know, just be quiet for a bit and breathe. It's something you can do in public without anybody being aware. And it genuinely does help. It is one of the most useful things I've learned in terms of how difficult it is to do, and how it's possible to do it anywhere. Other things you can do which touch upon what I would do to help people, and that is get yourself nice and relaxed. I would obviously put somebody into hypnosis and just imagine yourself in that situation being okay. And there you're using the ability of our brains to learn from an imagined experience as well as a real experience. So you can do that just by visualizing, making sure you're nice and relaxed before you start, and do that as often as you can. I do it in a much more structured way. In hypnosis, we will list the situations that people find fearful. We will score them on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is, what's the problem, and 10 is, oh, I can't do it, as bad as it can get. And then we start with the most comfortable situation. In hypnosis, we imagine being in that situation, and we imagine being nice and calm and relaxed and confident about being there. And we do it over and over again, checking the score as we go until we get that situation down to normal, and then we move on to the next most comfortable, until we've knocked all the situations off. And it works. It works brilliantly. So I've worked with people who had been very, very social animals when younger, and then, you know, had children, maybe had a reduced social life because of that, were fine in a business situation for them, were not comfortable in other situations, particularly just normal things like going out for a meal or going to the pub for a drink. And 4 sessions normally, and they could do whatever it was they wanted to do, and they could do it quite comfortably. And I also teach people techniques like the breathing technique and other ones to help them in case they get anxious about it not having worked until they've tested it. I mean, the going out one is easy to test. When I'm working with fear of flying, it's a bit more difficult to say, hop on a plane and just see if it's working. Okay then, so that's social anxiety, what it is, how I believe from the people I'm talking to and seeing that it is worse since the pandemic for pre-sufferers and for the rest of us for whom it may never have been a problem, and what you can do about it yourself. The breathing, can't recommend that highly enough. And if you're really suffering, well, you know where I am, you know how to get in touch with me. And as I say, it is the most consistently successful thing I do, and typically takes 4 one-hour sessions. Okay then, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time. And meanwhile, as always, take care of yourself. Bye.